you can go to get a lot of your questions answered. And then throughout the summer, we're having a variety of sessions. And I think I almost have all the dates scheduled at this point. So we will post those to all of you so you know what's coming up as well. So let me quickly share the screen and show you our website. So if you go onto our website, which is very easy, umaine.edu/international, you will see this link here for admitted students. So that is all of you. And on this page, there are lots of links to kind of guide you through the process of getting ready for arrival, applying for your visa and housing, and all of that. If you are transferring from another university or school, there's that information there. And then lots of pre-departure, arrival, and then we'll start to be populating our orientation page as well. There are some video tutorials about things, so you can look there. I know some people had questions about health insurance, so there's a link for that on here as well. So if we don't get to your questions today, I recommend that you visit this website, take a look, and then once you read some of that information, you may have more specific questions that you want to email us about, and then you can also attend some of the other sessions as well. We are going to try to record the sessions, so if you aren't able to make a session, you can find it later on our website. I know with time differences and people are busy with other things, sometimes it's hard to attend all of them. They will be different days, but they will be all at the same time. Okay, so the first thing I think you folks need to know is just to confirm the arrival date. So we have set for the arrival date as August 22nd, which is a Tuesday. So typically what happens is people arrive on that Tuesday. We have an event in the evening to get everyone together, and then the rest of the week we'll be doing orientation activities. So your I-20 or DS 2019 will have that date as a start date, August 22nd, but you are actually allowed to enter up to 30 days prior to that date. Okay. From there, I think I'm going to hand it over to Mireille, who's going to talk about the visa application process and just the different steps that you go through in order to get your visa, the kinds of documents you'll need, and then what happens if there's a delay or a denial, and how that will impact things. So Mireille, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. So yes, at this point, you've all been admitted to the University of Maine, and you should have all received your I-20 or your DS 2019. Those are the documents from the university that show your admission to our university. This document shows what program you're going to be attending and the dates of your program. This document also shows the financial resources that you have for your program here. So this is a really important document. And at this point, we are only emailing those documents to students. So you should have received this via email, either from our office or from the graduate school if you're a graduate student. And you should print this document and sign it at the bottom so that you have it ready for when you go in for your visa interview. So once you have this I-20, your first step will be to complete form DS-160, and that is the visa application document that is submitted to the Department of State. This is all done online. It's very easy. It's quite, it takes some time to go through all of the questions. But the good news is that you can start the form, you can save it and return to it later. Just make sure that you note your application number so that you can log back in without any problems later on. So you complete this form, and this form has a lot of questions about yourself, of course, because you're the applicant. It will ask you where you're going to be going to school, provide details from your I-20, when it asks for a contact in the United States, you're welcome to use the name of the person listed on the I-20, the person who has issued your I-20. Or if you know who your academic advisor is, you can put them. You can also put one of us from the Office of International Programs. This form has a lot of questions. It will likely ask you, I think, about your work history. So any positions that you may have held over time, even as a student, if you've had summer jobs, for example, you would need to list those there. And again, there's a lot of questions, so just make sure you go through all of them. And at the end of the process, once you make your payment, you have the option to schedule your appointment. And this is where it might be a little challenging for some of you. You know, some embassies or consulates have appointments fairly easily available, but others have a long wait. So what you need to do is you select a date that is appropriate for you. Again, keep in mind that arrival date is August 22nd. So hopefully you're able to schedule an appointment before this date. And we'll talk a little bit later about what if you can't. But let's just assume you can make an appointment at any time now. And that way, you know, you have plenty of time to get ready for your travels. Once you have scheduled your appointment, you can go ahead and pay your CVIS fee, which is required for all students. The CVIS fee is a one-time fee before you start a new program in the United States. And so you need to pay this fee before you go for your visa appointment. There's no need to pay for it too far in advance of your appointment, because the payment itself is only valid for 1 year. So if for some reason you're unable to get an appointment right away, you know, you don't want to lose that fee. So it's best to schedule your appointment. And once you know that you are able to go to this appointment, make your CVIS fee payment. You do need to have a receipt of that payment with you when you go for your visa appointment. Most students are able to pay for this fee online through a website, which is fmjfee.com. And this is something you will find through our pre-arrival documentation that you've received already from us, or you can also find it on our website. But most students can pay for this online using a credit card. However, there are a few countries that if the student is from that country, if they were born in that country, those fees have to be paid either via a check sent by mail or via Western Union payment. And those payments would obviously take longer than online. The online payment usually is very quickly posted to your account, so you would not need to make this payment too far in advance of your appointment. However, if you have to mail in a check or use Western Union, you do need to plan in advance, because those take longer to post. So just as a quick reference, the check payment or Western Union payment applies to students who are from Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, or the Gambia. And, you know, this is something that the government has decided. This is nothing that we're involved with. So if you're from one of those countries, you do have to either mail a check or make a payment via Western Union. So once you have your appointment, you've made your CVIS fee payment, you're now ready to go in for your interview. You need to prepare for this interview, because your interview, as you may have heard already, when you go in for this interview, it's very quick. It's maybe 2-3 minutes max. And so during that time period, you need to be prepared to answer questions and to show the documentation that the consular officer wants to see from you. So, you know, you don't have time to think about your answer, so you really need to be prepared. And so we'll talk a little bit about the things that you need to have with you and things that you need to consider in advance, so that you know what you're going to say during your interview. Of course, you need to have your I-20 and your passport. But you also would need to have with you, and sometimes this is not something you have as documentation, but you need to be able to articulate your strong ties to your home country, because the officer always assumes that a student who is applying for an F1 or a J1 visa, they always assume that they have immigrant intent. Not just those visas, but those visas are considered non-immigrant. And so you have to prove that you have non-immigrant intent, meaning you are coming to the United States temporarily for the purpose of your visit. And
Mary,
so,
can I give a
yes.
quick example? So if they asked you, for example, what do you plan to do after graduation? You would not want to necessarily say, I plan to get a job in the United States and live there forever. You want to make sure that you're, tying it to, well, I'm going to be doing a degree that's very relevant to work that I can do in my home country, that kind of thing.
Yes, thank you. So that would be obviously something you need to have in mind. You need to sort of have a plan already. Again, they may ask you, well, why the University of Maine? Why do you want to go study there? So you need to be able to explain how your choice to come to the University of Maine fits in with your long-term plan, and also with the program that you're going to be studying, and how your knowledge will be beneficial for your country when you go back and apply this new knowledge. So that's really, really important. Also, of course, family ties, but we know that when you're a young person, you don't necessarily have a family other than your parents and your siblings, as well as property. So if your family owns property that will someday be yours, that's also a good example of strong ties. But as Sarah mentioned, really important is to be able to articulate your choice of university and major, and how you will apply your knowledge to your country when you return. So this is really, really important. Again, your interview is only 2-3 minutes, and you need to be prepared and ready to answer those questions. If you hesitate, the consular officer will probably feel that you're not really prepared, to come to the US to be a student, and they may deny your visa. So please be prepared. As far as documentation that you need to bring, again, of course, the I-20 and the passport, but you also need to bring with you verification of your funding. That is another important part of your interview, and how you're going to be funded while you are at the University of Maine. And all of you have different situations. Some of you may have a partial tuition scholarship, so you need to have a letter from whoever is giving you this scholarship to show that you have this funding. Your funding will be listed on your I-20, but it's good to have the backup, the letters that show the award. So whether it's a partial tuition scholarship, a full tuition waiver, maybe you have a graduate assistantship through your department, or perhaps it's personal funding. Maybe it's a sponsor, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a loan. So whatever your case might be prepared to have with you those documents that show where your funding is coming from. And the funding, typically you need to show that you have available to you for the coming year, but it is expected that it will last through the time that you are a student here. So having verification of funding for 1 year is great, but that's not sufficient. You need to be able to, you need to be confident that your funding is going to be valid throughout the entire time you're a student here. So now I will talk about the situation where you may have a difficult time finding a visa appointment that fits within the time frame that would allow you to arrive for the fall semester. So again, arrival day is August 22nd, and classes start on August 28th. So even if you can arrive, around August 22nd, even if it's after, but if it's before August 28th, that would be fine. You would miss some important orientation programs, but we can make that up with you after you arrive. It's most importantly, you would be here by the first day of classes. So if you cannot get an appointment much before August 15th, I would say maybe August 1st, you could potentially request through the embassy that they would provide you with an expedited visa appointment. And this is something that varies by different embassies have different processes. So you need to look on their website and see what their procedures are for requesting, not emergency appointments, but expedited appointments. Some embassies will consider those requests up to 60 days before your program start date, but most of them will not consider an expedited appointment request more than 30 days before the program start date. So the program start date that we need to keep in mind here is August 22nd. That is when we ask students to arrive. So if you have a visa appointment that is scheduled for after July 23rd, let's say, you should be able to request an expedited visa appointment. And this is a process that is done online through the embassy's website. This is something that you would need to request. We are happy to provide a letter in support of your request, and we have a process that you would follow to request this letter. And this is something we can talk about, when the time comes. You could send an email and say you want to apply for an expedited appointment, and would give you the different steps to follow to request this letter. From past semesters, what I've heard from students is that if they make a request for an expedited appointment more than twice and they're denied, they will not be even considered for a new request for an expedited appointment. So you have to be careful in when you request, you put in those requests. Again, no sooner than 60 days before your start date, but perhaps not even sooner than 30. So check your embassy, or it's the US Embassy, of course, but in the country where you will be applying for the visa to see what their procedures are in that regard. And also I wanted to mention that we, as the University of Maine, we are not able to contact the embassy directly to assist with changing appointments or anything to that effect. So this is really something that you work through their procedures to request appointments and to request any changes to your appointments. So this applies to all students who are outside of the United States. And some of you may be already in the US as a student at another university, and you will be transferring your CVIS record from your previous university to the University of Maine. So the process might be slightly different. In particular, if you already have a visa stamp that is valid in your passport, then of course you would not need to get a new one. But if your current visa has expired, then you do need to go through all these steps, except you would not have to pay a new CVIS fee. So anytime you need to apply for a visa, you kind of have to go through this process, not just the first time.
And Mary, do you want to just
yeah.
walk the Canadians through the process quickly? Because obviously
Yes.
they don't need to.
I was just thinking about our Canadian students.
Sorry.
Canadian citizens are not required to actually get a visa stamp in their passport. So Canadian citizens can step the whole visa application process. Canadian citizens do need to print their I-20 or DS 2019 and sign them. And they need to make the CVIS fee payment. And they need to print the receipt that shows they've made that payment. And the receipt is available online. As soon as you make that payment, there is a way to download the receipt. So that's very easy. So a Canadian citizen only needs their passport, their I-20 or DS 2019, and verification of their CVIS fee payment. This is true if they're also good, of course, to have your admission letter and also verification of your funding. And these are the documents needed, whether you're you're flying into the United States or you're crossing a land border into the United States. So all of these documents would need to be provided. No need for a visa stamp in your passport. So now we'll talk briefly about students who, because of their visa appointments, who are not able to get an earlier appointment to arrive on time. We're going to talk about the limited options for what we call a late arrival. And there is a very short window for your arrival at the University of Maine. All students, so undergrad or graduate students, are allowed to arrive up to 1 week after the first day of classes. However, for graduate students who have an assistantship, it is imperative that they check with their advisor to see if a late arrival is possible. And also for those students, it's possible that they would have an agreement to arrive a little bit later. So this is a case-by-case basis for graduate students with assistantships and their advisors. And it also involves our office, but again, those are very limited situations. So for students, for all students, otherwise, you would need to arrive no later than September 3rd or September 4th, because you would need to be in the classroom by September 5th at the very latest. And that is the second week of classes. That means you will have missed the first week. Monday, September 4th is a holiday, so there are no classes that day. So that gives an extra day for arrival. But again, it's not ideal to miss an entire week of classes. So this is really only an exception. If there's absolutely no way that you can arrive by the 28th, by the 22nd really is ideal, but the 28th is the first day of classes. So you really need to make every effort to arrive before this date to start your program on time. And if you cannot, you'll be in communication with us and we'll know what your plan is so that we can provide some guidance about your arrival and all of the things that may affect being a late arrival. So be sure to stay in touch with us as we communicate with you before the arrivals for the fall. So, it's unfortunately, some students will be facing with a visa denial. It happens for various reasons, but the most common reason for visa denial is that the consular officer felt that the student did not have sufficient ties to their home country or sufficient evidence that they would return to their home country after completing their academic program in the United States. That is the most common reason. And when a student is denied a visa for this reason, they can certainly apply again. There is no delay. There's no need to wait a certain amount of time. However, you really need to have new information when you go back for your second interview, because the consular officer will have kept notes about, your previous interview and reasons why they denied the visa. And so the next person who interviews you will need to see new information to overcome the denial. So make sure that you prepare for that. And you can also look online. If you can just Google visa, student visa denials, things like that. You can find lots of videos out there that can help you prepare for a visa interview, especially after you've had a visa denial. So those are good resources. So if your visa is denied and you're unable to come for the semester that you are admitted to, so currently that would be for the fall semester, it is usually possible to request a deferral, and that means that you would like to ask to come for a different semester. And most times a student would ask to come for the following semester, which would be spring 2024. On occasion, we've seen deferrals for a full year. So it all depends on your program Some programs do not have a spring start date, so that might be the case where you would have to defer for an entire year. But the deferral is handled by the admissions team. So if you're an undergraduate student, it would be the international team in our office. If you're a graduate student, your advisor and the graduate school would process a deferral and review your request and approve a request. And it's not guaranteed, but I think it's pretty likely that it would be approved, but of course we can't guarantee that. Especially for graduate students who have been awarded an assistantship, it may be that your professor cannot wait for you to arrive at a different date. So this is all handled between you and your advisor if you're a graduate student. Typically, you're able to defer once without too many questions. I think twice is sometimes possible, but usually more than twice is not an option. And at that point, a student would need to submit a new application if they wanted to defer again. If you need to defer because your visa keeps getting denied because of the reason that you don't have strong ties to your home country, if you're denied on that reason multiple times, it's probably going to be difficult for you to overcome that denial over time. So, think that's something to consider when you make a request for a deferral. So this was the general information on how to apply for a visa. And I don't know if we're ready to transition to questions.
Yeah, why don't we? So I think, many of you pre-submitted questions, and I think Mireille covered a lot of answers in her presentation. Julia has a question. She's from Canada, and she just wanted to clarify, as a transfer student, and she had all the completed documents for her old school. So she just needs to come to the border with her new I-20, right?
Yes, that would be correct. You do not need to pay CVIS fee again as long as we were able to do a CVIS transfer.
Yeah, I think that's the important part. I'm not sure if Julia's transfer was completed. That's why I put in chat there, as long as the way I understand it, and I'm admissions, not the immigration. So, if the CVIS record is active at the previous US school, then we can complete the transfer, and then she wouldn't have to pay the fee. But if it's not longer active, she would have to, right?
Well, it's not even just a matter of it being active. It depends if the student has left the US. It depends if they completed a program previously or if they're transferring, like in the middle of their academic program at the other school. So perhaps that's a question that Julia could, or maybe we can just make a note to review her case and send her an email.
Yeah, that might be good. I think she did leave home. And before we sent her the instructions about the CVIS transfer, so that might be good to take a look at.
Okay, I've made a note and I'll review it.
Aisha is asking about if you have a visa appointment on August 3rd, is that enough time? And I think that should be enough time. And there's some kind of security check, but I would think that would be plenty of time.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, a question regarding the funding on the DS-160. From all 5 options, which one should I select, as I have been given the graduate assistantship? I don't know much about the particular form. Maybe you do, Mireille?
Unfortunately, I don't recall the specific questions they ask about the funding.
I think if you emailed the different questions, the different options to UMaine Immigration, we might be able to look that up, or once we look at it, we might be able to answer that.
Yes.
We also had some other questions about finances, and so if, for example, you have a sponsor who's paying for you, and, you know, you get here and they can no longer pay, or, you know, how do you get a tuition waiver or find assistantships? I do want to be very upfront that once you get here, if your situation changes and you do not have the funds that you thought you were going to have, it is very difficult to find funding, you know, for your program. As you know, it's a lot of money, and the assistantships are pretty competitive, and they're typically given out, you know, well before the start of the school year. So you really do want to make sure that you have secure funding that you know is going to be lasting throughout your entire time here, before you come, because there just really isn't, you know, there just isn't sort of extra money floating around that that can be given out in terms of scholarship dollars, assistantships. If you don't have an assistantship when you first get here, you may have a very difficult time finding one. There is, you know, occasionally there are emergencies. I mean, we certainly saw that during the pandemic, and a student could apply for sort of emergency work authorization off campus, but any job that you were going to have off campus is not going to pay the full amount of your education. So it may, you know, it may help, and that process is, you know, takes several months. It costs, there's a cost to applying for work authorization off campus. So it can be helpful in covering some living expenses, but it's not going to cover the bulk of your education. So make sure that you have all of your finances lined up before you come, so that you don't get yourself in a difficult situation once you get here. We had some questions about group communication before arrival. And so as we mentioned at the start of the session, I had people put their name and country. So hopefully that will start to connect people. But Andres, do you want to talk a little bit about our WhatsApp group?
Yeah, sure. So at some point soon, probably sooner rather than later, since it is kind of a popular initiative, I will be sending an email to join the WhatsApp group. And so we'll include some instructions how to join. And that group is pretty active already. And so you'll be joining a, you know, pretty vibrant community, a group that, you know, will help you connect with the students who are already here, and new ones that are, you know, here in this Zoom room, and also those who haven't been able to join. So yeah, that's coming soon to your emails.
Great, thank you. There's a question from someone who has a graduate assistantship, and he's asking about, you know, does he have to submit a financial statement since the assistantship is for 1 year, and it should be extended. So I'm not quite sure. I guess you already have your I-20, right? We only sent this out to people with I-20. So you shouldn't have to submit anything to us as long as the graduate assistantship covered a full year. Occasionally at a visa appointment, you'll show the letter saying that you have an assistantship for 1 year. And occasionally we've had students told that they actually need to show something that covers for the full period of their education, but that's fairly unusual. And I think in that case, Mireille, have we supplied a letter?
Yeah, we can, I mean, in general, an assistantship is renewed based on satisfactory progress. That's pretty standard. And so we could provide such a letter if that was requested by the embassy, yes.
Andres, this might be for you. So the $20,000 scholarship, what does that cover? So I guess it's tuition essentially.
Oh yeah, sure. So the 20,000. So this is for undergraduates that have shown, you know, exceptional academic preparation. And so that scholarship essentially reduces the tuition cost. It doesn't cover all of it, but it does reduce a great portion of it. I think about 75% or so, or 70 maybe, something like that. So yeah, I'll send you a link with our costs, and so basically you can subtract the 20,000 from the tuition, and that that is the that's what your tuition will be.
Yeah, also you can look at your I-20 under the financial section. There is a description of the estimated cost for the, for your first year. And there's the tuition and fees are listed, your living expenses, and then your insurance, books, and supplies. So your $20,000 scholarship will only cover part of that cost. And again, it goes toward your tuition. It doesn't go toward your living expenses. So make sure that you have funding for the remaining expenses, which should be listed on your I-20 already.
And Andres, for undergraduates, if they are forced to defer because they didn't get a visa in time, will that scholarship still be there if they come the following semester?
Yeah, that's still the plan. Yeah, just make sure to communicate, what happened, and let us know by email. That's the best way to communicate everything to us, so we have a record. And yeah, the scholarships are still, so as far as the information I have right now, should continue into the spring and the next fall.
Yeah, and I would say for graduate students, if you've been offered an assistantship and you have to defer, I think in most cases, the university, really tries to keep that offer on the table, and it will be there for you in the, the next semester. However, there may be cases where it's just not possible based on what the assistantship is and the advisor's needs. So that would be a conversation between you and your advisor. But I think whenever possible, they try to, keep the offer open at least for one more semester. There was a question about if a visa is denied, what help can our office provide? Do you want to answer that, Mireille?
I'm so sorry. I was reading another question and I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
If someone is denied their visa, what can they expect from our office in terms of assistance?
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, there really isn't much that we can do because you're the applicant and you're the one that has to show your information to the U.S. To the consular officer. If you let us know that you've been denied a visa, likely I will ask if you can provide me with a copy of the denial notice, just so we can make sure that we know what the reason is. And and if it is not because of if it is not because of the lack of strong ties to your home country, then we can maybe review that reason and see how else you can reapply for the visa. But if it is due to your the lack of strong ties to your home country, unfortunately, it will be up to you to show new evidence the next time you go for your visa appointment. And again, we'd probably suggest that you look online for some tips and some videos from people out there who are providing general advice on how to overcome a visa denial. So the university really cannot have a say in the visa decision.
Right. There are a couple of questions about scholarships and tuition waivers and that kind of thing. And we aren't really the people to answer those. For graduate students, we will have a session later in the summer with some folks from the graduate school, but whatever program you're in, I would encourage you to reach out to that program to see what is available, because we just don't have that information. I'm gonna go to our other questions here. There were also some questions about health insurance. So the quick answer that from the question in the chat is your health insurance, if you're taking the University of Maine health insurance, will start on August 1st. So typically well before most students get here. You will be getting some information on how to enroll in that insurance, and then if you don't want that insurance, what you need to do. But I encourage you, again, to go to our website and read the page on health insurance, because I believe there's a video there that really talks about the cost of healthcare in the United States. It's very expensive. And, you know, your different options for health insurance while you're here. And then there will be a session totally focused on healthcare and health insurance on June 13th. So you can join that and we'll get more into the nitty gritty, as we say.
So I'll just jump in here and say that I'll send a message out as a follow-up to everyone with the dates for the upcoming webinars and the topics, just so you can have those written down ahead of time.
All right, so just looking at our questions. Oh, Andres, there's a question about transcripts. Do they need hard copies? How does that work?
Well, so I don't want to speak for grad school. They might have different rules, so it depends if this question is from a graduate student or undergraduate. I can speak for undergraduate. For students, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be hard copies. The important part is that we need to receive the transcript directly from the other school, from the school that you attended. So, you know, because of the pandemic, things have kind of loosened up a little bit and made it a little bit easier to do that. So for those of you who can contact the school that you attended in the past and ask them to email us. So again, I'm talking about undergraduate level, so this would be like a high school. Secondary school that you finished, if they can send us the final official transcripts via email from the official school's email address, then we should be able to accept those as official. I know in some countries students get that one copy and that's it. So you know, if it's on some kind of special paper and can be reasonably verified as official, that might work, but again, depends on grad or undergrad. So yeah, kind of a tough thing to answer because it depends on you know, on the level. And then like I said, you know, the important part is that we need to receive the transcript from the other school, not from the student per se, right? So even though there might be a lot of stamps and signatures on your transcripts, if you are the one sending it to us, we can't really accept it as official. It has to come directly from the school, either by, you know, paper mail or email from an official email address, if it is by email. So hopefully that makes sense.
Great. Also, I want to mention there were a few questions, pre-submitted questions about, sorry, trying to plug in my computer, about your academic programs. You know, what courses would you have to take in your first year? And you really need to contact your advisor or your department about that. Again, we are just not really familiar with that information. And there are lots of different programs, so it varies by program. And then there's another question here about additional support letters. This is specifically from the graduate school for your visa interview. And you really shouldn't need any other letters other than your admission letter that shows, you know, if you have an assistantship. You shouldn't need anything beyond that in your I-20. The only exception is occasionally students from Iran or other countries where there's an export control issue, you may be asked for more information about your program and what particularly you're studying, and, you know, or the kinds of research you might be doing with your advisor. And in that case, the best person to contact is your advisor. And sometimes they will then contact me to get sort of advice of what they're looking for. But for most people, there shouldn't be any other letter needed unless, Mireille, you have any suggestions.
No, I agree with everything you said. Typically, when those requests are made, the advisor has to provide information themselves. So it's usually comes right from their side.
Okay. All right. I think we've answered most of the, let me just check the chat here. If there are any more visa related questions. On the DS-160, what should they put for their US address?
I think you could either use our office. I mean, unless you already know where you'll be staying, which at this point it may be too early. You're welcome to put our office address or your department address. If you're a graduate student, that would be fine.
Okay. And just a reminder, if your visa is denied or delayed and you're going to be a late arrival, you'd want to contact Mireille as soon as possible so she can provide information on what to do. Initial steps upon arriving at the University of Maine, you're going to be getting a lot of information about that, but I mean, if you're arriving right in time for orientation, those first few days are going to be taken up with lots of sessions and activities. There is a mandatory immigration check-in that needs to be done by law, but that's all part of the orientation. And if you miss that, or occasionally there's a conflict with the graduate school orientation, then we would have makeup sessions, but you'll get tons of information about that.
There's a new question to Sarah from Anna that is asking, her visa application was denied last year, and she's asking if she needs to submit new financial documents to get a new I-20, I believe. So the answer is probably very likely that you will need to submit new financial documents, Anna.
All right, someone's asking for the link to the health insurance page, so I'm going to put that in the chat. Ordering books, that's I guess I'm going to leave that for another session because things are changing a little bit at the bookstore, but you could go online to the University of Maine bookstore website, and I'm sure there's lots of information there. Okay. In the pre-submitted questions, there were a couple of questions just about, you know, student clubs and different support systems on campus. I will say one of the things I think you'll find is that at a US university, I mean, one of the hallmarks is really loads and loads of support systems. So there's if you're an undergrad, there's tutoring programs, there's a writing center for both grads and undergrads, there's advising centers. So the key is taking advantage of those support systems that are there. And when you get to campus, if you don't know where to go, your very first stop can be our office. Ella Wu, who is, I guess she was not able to join us, is our student success coordinator. And she is a great person to talk to in terms of like, okay, I'm having this issue, who can help me on campus? So there really are you know, there's so many things that you can take advantage of. I had a group of Tanzanians come and visit a few years ago, and I showed them around campus and took them to the library, and they were just like, wow, with all of these resources, like students just, it must be impossible to fail here. And they were right, but many students do fail, and usually it's the ones who don't take advantage of those resources. So I really encourage you to find out what those are, be proactive. We'll talk a little bit during our Adjusting to US Culture session about kind of the difference between US culture and other cultures in terms of asking for help. And in the US culture, American culture, the expectation is that you ask for help. So people aren't really, I mean, sometimes it happens, but often it's not the case where people are like, oh, wow, that person over there really looks like, you know, they could use a little help. You know, it's really important that you are proactively seeking help if you need it. I would say our office is pretty good about trying to figure out if you need help or not, but that's not, you know, the general American culture. There are many, many clubs on campus. So anything that you like to do, you can probably find other people who want to do it with you. So again, during our US Culture session, we'll talk about that. All of you will automatically be part of our International Student Association. So you'll very immediately have a network of people that you can rely on, count on, socialize with. We have coffee hours every week. We have lots of events where you can teach people about your culture, but also learn about other cultures. So it's a lot of fun. You have to balance your academics with the extracurricular stuff, but I think you'll find that, you know, it's a very active campus, lots of things to do, beautiful nature. We're just coming into our late spring, early summer, and it's absolutely gorgeous outside. So you'll enjoy that as well. So we're coming up on our hour. So let me just check here if there's anything else. Again, you'll be getting lots of information about what to do once you get here. Getting a library card and, you know, which you use for the bus system, that's going to just all be part of orientation. Can you register after you arrive at UMaine for classes? Yes. Yeah, I guess Andres answered that. Most undergraduates will be automatically registered, but grads, so scholarships for international students in sports, typically any kind of sports scholarship is, you know, go to sort of recruited athletes. It's not often that someone comes here and says, oh, I'm really good at such and such. You know, I'm a really good basketball player or a football player, and then they are able to get a scholarship. So I would not count on that. But if you are into sports, there are lots of opportunities, even if you're not on one of the, you know, athletic teams. There's lots of opportunities for intramural sports. So I'm sure you will find something that will make you happy. All right, so we're at our hour, so I guess we'll stop there. And just a reminder that we have many other sessions throughout the summer, and Mireille is going to be emailing you about those. We have almost all of the dates finalized, so we can get that out soon. Again, we'll record the sessions so that you'll find them in a day or two on our website. Well, give us a week, I guess. And so if you missed part of the session or you miss other sessions, you can go back later and look. Again, we are so excited to have this process starting of, you know, the meeting our new students and preparing for fall. The summer is going to go very quickly, so you'll be here before you know it. And just remember that we are here. We're here all summer. One of us is around if you have questions. We recommend that if you have an immigration question that you email UMaine immigration@maine.edu. Because that way, if, Mireille is on vacation or I'm away, somebody will be monitoring that box. And then if you have more academic questions or admission questions, if you're an undergrad, you'll want to email our admission team here or the grad school admission team for those questions. All right. Well, thank you for joining, everyone. Mireille, thank you for a great presentation, and Andres for helping to answer questions. And we will see you all at the next session, hopefully. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.